Since 1976, Concorde has flown from London and Paris to New York's John F. Kennedy Airport up to 3 times a day, plying the Atlantic Ocean in just over 3 hours at twice the speed of sound. But rarely has this evocative aircraft ventured beyond these shores. In 1999, however, history was made and speed records broken as Concorde undertook the ultimate trip, a full circumnavigation of the globe.
Cabin crew, seats for takeoff, please.
Leg of our Abercrombie and Kent Round the World tour by Concorde, flying from New York over to Vancouver. I'm Jeff Mussett, the PR on this particular flight, and taking the opportunity to come back and have a word with the passengers. And my job really is to make sure that they're informed of what's going on in the flight, take some of the load off the flight deck crew. We're going supersonic over land, which is most unusual for Concorde, and they've got to navigate very accurately to stick to the flight plan that's been agreed with the Canadian authorities. So what we've done is come north from New York towards Montreal and started a supersonic acceleration 300 miles north of Montreal. And that's taken us right up over Hudson Bay and round north of Churchill, and then we're going to come all the way to the west, down by Peace River in Alberta, down in towards Vancouver.
With the vast Pacific crossing still ahead, Vancouver was to prove the most strategic link on the route. This was the most westerly crewed BA outpost on the journey, and as such, successful planning at this stage was to be absolutely critical to the overall success of the entire round-the-world flight. From here on, Concorde was, for all intents and purposes, on her own. Spare parts such as tyres had to be loaded into the rear cabin, and specially trained London-based ground engineers flown out to check every part of the aircraft in fine detail before permission would be granted to allow the flight to depart the 3,000 miles to Hawaii. In addition, 2 highly qualified Concorde engineers travelled aboard in case of problems. One of Concorde's limitations is range in hot conditions, with each additional kilo of weight reducing distance. With a full payload of passengers, all with 3 weeks' worth of luggage and some heavy spare parts, Captain Jeff Mussett had to make some careful calculations, not just for this section, but for the following 2 as well. The most worrying problem for the crew and ground engineers was the second leg of the Pacific crossing from Hawaii to Fiji, which fell at the very limit of Concorde's range. As the new cabin crew, flown out especially from London, prepared for their own trip of a lifetime, the flurry of activity on the ground continued as the minutes ticked away prior to departure. volcanic lava surrounding the runways fast disappearing, Concorde was to head off for its longest and trickiest Pacific sector, across 3,200 miles of nothing but ocean.
There aren't very many spare airfields to go to on the long beach.
With the skyline of Australia's most famous city only 2 hours away, the crossing of the world's largest ocean at Mach 2 was rapidly becoming part of aviation history. Having crossed half the world in record-breaking time, the realization of what we'd achieved started to set in.